Welcome to Notebook Summaries, where today we're diving into the dramatic history of modern South Korea. And when I say dramatic, I mean it. This is a nation that was truly forged in fire.
I mean, just think about it for a second. How does a country go from the absolute rubble of war to a global superpower in just one lifetime? That's really the core question of South Korea's incredible story. It's this journey of radical transformation that we're going to unpack right now.
Okay, so this timeline gives us a quick roadmap. We're starting in 1945 with a nation divided, then the war, military rule, the big fight for democracy in '87, and finally, where it is today as an economic and cultural power. So, yeah, let's dive right in.
Okay, so our story really kicks off in 1945. You know, the end of World War II should have brought this unified, independent Korea that everyone was hoping for. But that's not what happened. Instead, it brought a massive fracture right down the middle of the peninsula. And that set the stage for a whole new kind of conflict.
So, this division at the 38th parallel, it was supposed to be temporary, but it hardened and fast. You had the U.S. running things in the south, creating a capitalist, West-aligned state, and in the north, the Soviet Union set up a communist one. So by 1948, you've got two totally separate nations with opposite ideologies. And here's the kicker. Both were backed by a Cold War superpower, and both claimed they were the legitimate government for the entire Korean peninsula. You can see where this is going.
Right, so that ideological split, yeah, it didn't stay a war of words for long. It exploded into a devastating war, and what followed was decades of destruction and dictatorship.
So on June 25, 1950, North Korea invaded the South and boom, a massive conflict kicks off, drawing in forces from all over the world. It was brutal, and it lasted for 3 years. But here's the thing that's so crucial to understand. It didn't end with a peace treaty. It ended with an armistice, which is basically just a ceasefire. It never actually resolved anything. And that's what cemented the division, creating that heavily fortified DMZ and leaving behind a conflict that is technically still just frozen.
You know, for the next 30 years, South Korea's political history was this revolving door of republics. You'd get these brief little experiments with democracy, like the Second Republic, and then bam, crushed by a military coup. This constant instability, the cycle, it's what allowed these autocratic rulers to step in and say, look, only iron-fisted rule can bring order and progress. And for a long time, that's what they got.
And this leads us to a really pivotal and tragic moment of resistance. It's May 1980 in the city of Gwangju. What starts as a student-led protest against a new military regime and martial law, well, it explodes into a citywide uprising. We're talking about ordinary citizens taking up arms to defend themselves.
And the regime's response was just swift and brutal. The official numbers are still debated, but we know at least 200 civilians were killed, with hundreds more injured. The Gwangju Massacre, as it became known, was this incredibly painful symbol of the struggle against military rule. But it also did something else. It lit a fire under the pro-democracy movement that would burn for years.
Okay, but here's where things get really fascinating. At the exact same time that political freedoms were being crushed, the economy was, well, it was exploding. It's this huge paradox, and it's right at the heart of what's called the miracle on the Han River.
Yeah, this slogan from the military leader at the time, Park Chung-hee, it just sums it all up, right? Development first, unification later. The philosophy was simple. Rapid, export-driven industrialization was the #1 goal. Everything else, democracy, human rights, even reunification, that could all wait.
And the engine for all this growth? Something called the chaebol. These were, and still are, these massive, family-controlled industrial giants. You know their names: Samsung, Hyundai, LG. The government basically threw its full support behind them, giving them loans and tax breaks to build up key industries like electronics and cars, all for export.
And it worked. I mean, it worked spectacularly well. South Korea became known as one of the 4 Asian tigers, along with Singapore, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. This strategy was so successful, it basically transformed the country from one of the poorest in the world to a global economic player, all in just a couple of decades. It was incredible.
But here's the thing about that economic miracle. It kind of planted the seeds of the military regime's own downfall. Because with all that growth, you got a new, educated, prosperous middle class. And they started asking a very powerful question. Wait a minute, if our country can be this successful, why can't we be free? This all leads to a massive showdown.
And this is how it all went down.
In 1987, the president basically announced he was just going to handpick his successor, and public anger just boiled over. Then, a student protester died during a police interrogation, and that was the final spark. The protests exploded into this nationwide movement called the June Struggle. We're talking over 1 million people on the streets. The government just couldn't ignore it anymore.
And it was a huge victory for the people. Seriously, the government completely caved. They issued something called the June 29 Declaration, which was a landmark moment. It promised key democratic reforms, and the big one was the direct election of the president. It was the first time in 16 years that people would get to actually choose their own leader.
So, that brings us to 1988 and the start of the Sixth Republic, which is basically modern democratic Korea. And this era is just packed with incredible highs and some pretty tough new challenges.
And you can see just how dynamic this modern era has been. I mean, look at this. They hosted the Olympics in '88, joined the Club of Wealthy Nations, the OECD, in '96. They got hit hard by the Asian financial crisis but bounced back. They even held the first ever summit with North Korea in 2000, and a huge one. In 2017, their first female president was impeached and removed from office. Then, in 2025, President Yoon Suk-yeol was also impeached and removed, which just goes to show how seriously they take democratic accountability.
So, that brings us to today, and South Korea's without a doubt a global force. It's an economic powerhouse, a world leader in things like electronics and cars. Culturally, I mean, the Korean wave, Hallyu, with K-pop and K-dramas, has just taken over the world. But it's not perfect. It still faces huge challenges, that constant tension with North Korea, deep political divides at home, and a population that's actually shrinking.
So, when you step back and look at it all, from division and war to democracy and global influence, the story of South Korea is it's a powerful testament to resilience. This incredible journey from rubble to a global icon all in one lifetime really makes you wonder, what will the next chapter hold? Hey, if you enjoyed this quick history, you should definitely check out the full playlist on our channel, Notebook Summaries. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss the next explainer. Thanks so much for watching.